Welcome to Vibrant Living Conversations, episode 21, the first episode of season 2. Yay! I'm your host, Gemma Putty. I took the summer to enjoy the long days with my family and to work on my life coaching certification. But now as we move back into the fall, I'm feeling the pull to have more conversations to support us all in glowing from the inside out by connecting more deeply to ourselves, our earth, and our communities. For today's interview, I'm talking with Jaki, human design guide and owner of Guiding You Home to You. I was introduced to Jaki through Dr. Bonita Hazel of Soul Movement Chiropractic. And she was in episode number 16, and I actually get to see her later today, but yay. So Jaki did my human design reading back in April. I'm really excited to have her here today to talk more about human design and how it helps us gain clarity on who we are by really stepping into our powers and awakening our own unique gifts, and therefore gaining inner guidance to live each moment by. So thank you, Jaki. Welcome.
Hi, Gemma. Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. Like, there it is. It's in a nutshell. I don't need to say anymore.
We're done.
Yep. Perfect.
No, oh my gosh, when we did the reading back in April, I loved it so much, but there's so many pieces of it. So I know even back then you're like, okay, sit on it a little bit, like reflect on the report that you gave me. And then we'll come back and talk about it in a few months once you kind of like let things settle. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but I'm curious to start with, what is your elevator pitch on what is human design?
Yeah, you're so right though. Like, it is very complex. So I just love though how you explained it, because it is a map of our soul and how we are here to operate and what our inherent gifts are. And what I have found is when I am doing readings with individuals, they're like, holy smokes, like I totally feel that. I resonate with that. I actually have not done a reading with somebody that's like, that's not me, but they're just like, holy smokes, I don't need to ignore this part of my soul that's yearning to come out or like making decisions. So within human design, it tells us how we're here to make our decisions, which is not in our mind, which that's how we've been taught, or like follow your gut. And that's not right for everybody. So when I share that with them, they're like, wow, yeah, that's how I feel like I need to make decision. But I go back to the pro and cons list, or, they go into their logical mind, which in human design, that is not how we're here to operate. So yeah, it's our soul map of coming home to self is what I like to call it, because it really it gives us the operating manual of how we're here to be. And once we start living in that, we are living in ease and flow. And let me say, though, it can be really hard at first in the beginning, because it really shakes up your world when you're so used to operating in a certain way.
Right.
It can be a challenge, but it's a fun experience,
Yeah. Well, and we should say even too how, like, when you start to do a reading, like you look at someone's date of birth, the time they were born, the location they were born, because I was born in the UK. So it was like, that obviously had different energy and was a different time zone than over here. Those are the things,
definitely.
Right?
Yeah. So basically to get your chart, I need your birth time, location, date, exact time. And then I put it into this system that was created by Rahuruhu. And then it pulls up your chart. So there are 5 different energy types. And within those energy types, there are 5 strategies for those energy types. And then there's 7 different authorities. And then there's profiles, gates, and channels and your energy centers. So, it does go really, really, really deep. So, but really, it just pulls it up, and then we have that conversation, but no 2 energy type is the same. Like, you do have the same aura, you do have the same strategy, but within your chart, there's so many different things within it that if you meet 2, you're a manifestor. So if I know a handful of manifestors, not all of the manifestors I know are the same. You guys are so unique. So that's what's really fascinating about this modality. And it goes off of several different ancient traditions. So that is astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Hindu chakra system, the tree of life from the Kabbalist tradition, and quantum mechanics, and then other science modalities such as astronomy, genetics, and biochemistry. So it is like
super
really big and deep. And what Raruhu, he channeled all this information in 1987.
Okay.
He's a Canadian. He's passed now, but a lot of the things that he talks about, like scientifically, have now been proven in our science community. And of course, even with the ancient modalities as well, like the chakra system, like now we have machines like where you can stand in front of, and we can see those auras, those energy orbs and stuff. So it's like, it's really cool. And it's just cool to like see that, wow, like he's not just making stuff up, like.
Right. Well, and it's like we always hear, right? Like we're unique beings. We come to this, like we've dropped in to have this human experience for a very specific and our own reason. And there'll never be anyone else like us on this planet. And like mentally okay. But like you get into like the grind of the world and like what that actually means is very much lost. So like coming into doing human design and having all of these, I love that he tapped into all of these like different ways, like astrology and chakra system, which I'm obsessed with. And because he wasn't saying this is the right way. It was like, there's been a ton of work done on this across like centuries. Like, let's bring it all together and really break down how each of us shows up in the world, like what our gifts are, whether we're here, because there's the manifester, which is really here to create a new way and to almost lead. But then what are some of the other energy types there? Just to give people kind of an idea. Okay, so there is the manifester, but there's also, there was 5, you said, right?
Yeah. Do you want me to go over them?
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah. Okay, so there's the manifester, which is about 9% of the population. So there's not a lot of manifestors. And your aura has a pushing, it's like a pushing aura. It's closed, but really what it's about, it's to push the way forward, to be the leaders, to be the initiators, to innovate. And that could be something that's just like never been seen before, or something that has already been done, but you see it in a different way and you're moving that forward. And what will happen is you're pushing the way, and then the people that resonate with you are going to hop on board and they're going to follow along. And their strategy is to initiate and inform. So strategy is the way we're here to show up in least resistance. So for manifestors, it's like, hey, here's this thing, boom, let's do it. And then you put it out there, and you need to have people that will do the detailed doing, like the detailed work, because your energy does not like work in that way. You'll get spurts of like energy, and then you'll need to rest. And that resting could be like several days, or, who knows, so you're not here to go all the time. And so, and manifestors are just really, really cool. But one thing with manifestors is like growing up in our society, like we're just taught to be quiet, listen, do as you're told. And that is really, really hard for manifestors. To grow out of that, to heal from that, right? Like as you get older, you're like, I don't know, does my voice even matter? It's like, yes, it does. But you're like, I don't want to say this because then they're going to, try and change how I see things or what I'm seeing. I'm just going to, so you guys kind of tend to feel alone because people don't get you. And you just have this energy, right? So it's just like, it's hard to know because your aura is closed. So they're like, we don't understand. And your energy does move quickly, especially when you get those creative downloads or just those ideas. And you're like, what's going on? I need to listen. Like, how do I get this out? And even if you just get it out and you don't move forward with it, maybe that is something that will happen later on. When the time seems right. But really, you're not really here to wait for the right timing, because your timing is now. Like, whereas the others, we need to.
But it's like going back to that piece that you were saying about like, I've always been like, I follow what people like, I follow the path, or I used to anyway, right? Like you do this and you go to college and you get another degree and you get straight A's and you look a certain way. And,
yes,
you know, and it's coming back to this, like human design giving you permission to be who you are, and not being like, why does my voice matter any more than anyone else's? Like, be humble. Like, why would you stand out? Don't be loud. Like, just do your thing. Like, mind your own business. Like, that was the stuff that I was raised on, which wasn't coming from a bad place, but it was coming from a like societal blanket of how to behave in the world, rather than like, Gemma, this is who you are as a person on this planet, and this is your journey. It gives me like chills thinking about it, because it's just like, no, our society is not set up to like truly honor like who we are as individuals, and like even let us figure that out. Like, I'm 36 years old, right? And I'm like, oh, this is what my purpose here is. Like, okay, like let's step it up now, because I'm 4 decades in almost, you know.
And just rewiring all of that, you know. I mean, we live in the wounded patriarchy, and that is all about sticking us in systems, making us tired so we can't like really show up in our uniqueness. Because if we were to do that, oh goodness, this world would be so beautiful.
I know, right?
Yeah. And I do want to go back to saying like, your time is now. Yes, that's true. But also too, like when there's other things in play, like the timing, noticing when the timing is, right. So yeah, there's so many different little things. And that's why like having a human design reading is really great, because there's just so many little nuanced things within just like what we're talking about right now. So yeah, this is just kind of like an overview, but
let's touch on the other 4 really quick, just so people can be like, okay, well, I'm not a manifestor. That's not resonating with me, but oh, maybe I'm
maybe you're the other. Okay. So then there's the generator.
Okay.
And so the generator has a pulling aura. So it's open and enveloping. So when they're in their alignment, people feel really drawn to them. Like life comes to them. Things just magnetize towards them. They're here to be like the doers. They have that energy. They wake up, they're ready to go. They can go all day, hit the pillow, they're out. And this is about, so generators and then manifesting generators, they're about 70% of the population. So with generators though, they're really here to find what lights them up, what delights them. Their whole thing is finding out who they really are, and then being that, so like just authentically just being who they are, like unapologetically. And when they do that and they follow what lights them up, they're going to find themselves in situations and meeting people that are right for them to create the path into their purpose. And so their strategy is to respond. And so that basically is right. You're in your magnetism, and people, life, like all the things come to you, and then you listen to your body, whatever your authority is, which is something we can talk about another time. We might have to have a second episode.
Right? No, seriously.
They need to like trust what their body's telling them and follow that, even if it makes no sense. And for manifesting generators and generators, they are also, they're kind of known as like the people pleasers, or they just always say yes to everything. I mean, we all have that tendency, but these individuals, since they do have that energy, people see that and they're like, oh, well, they always say yes to everything, so I'm just going to assume and expect that. And then they just all the things. So for them, it's really like coming back into trusting themselves and saying no, which can be really hard. And then when they do that and just follow their delightfulness, life just moves really easily to them, because they're really here to be satisfied in life. And then when I was mentioning manifesting generators, so they also have the same aura and strategy type as generators. So they're the hybrid. So they're here, they have that manifesting quality, but they also have the energy to be able to do the tedious, detailed work. It comes easy to them. Their energy moves like really, really fast. So faster than manifestors. So that is also considered another type, but in traditional human design, that was just, it really wasn't considered something separate, but Ra Uru did talk about the manifesting generator. However, one thing that Ra does talk about is that with time, that human design is going to continue to mutate, because once we start to step in, once whoever chooses to utilize this modality, when we're stepping into that, it's going to change the frequency within ourselves, within the world, within the earth. And it's it's mutating. So there's going to be different things that are going to be coming up and how people see it and translate it. So the other type is the projector, and that's 20% of the population. They have a penetrating aura. So it's very absorbing and penetrating. So it's almost like someone has a spotlight and they're like, they walk in the room, and then sometimes, you feel that like, oh, whoa, that person's really like looking at me, I'm like, oh, I really feel like like that is their aura. And it's a beautiful, beautiful aura, but to some, it can feel very invasive. So for their strategy, it's to wait for the invitation. And they're here to be the guides, the seers, the teachers, because they can see so deeply into people, they can see into systems. And it's just a matter of the projectors finding what that specific thing is and really just diving into that and becoming like allowing that to be what they're here to do, as in guiding or teaching or or leading too. So they can be a leader. So it's not just manifestors that can be leaders. Like we all can be leaders, but like it's just in a different kind of way.
Gotcha. Okay. I love it. And we won't get into the details of all of like the authority, like you said, there'll be part 2. But even for me, my authority was splenic.
Oh yeah.
What are the other, just like, what are the other names?
Well, there's one more energy
type.
Is
there? Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Which are the reflectors, and that's 1% of the population. So their aura is a sampling aura. So it's really like they're reflecting back to whoever they're with or their environment. So they really feel, and so projectors as well, but more so reflectors, because they're completely open within their chart. They do have some gates defined, but all their centers are completely open or undefined. Which means that when that happens, like we absorb the other and we amplify it, but they're here to evaluate. There are assessors. They're like the shamans and the gurus that so they're really, really incredible. And then the authorities, their strategy, sorry, I'm getting all over the place. Okay. So their strategy is to wait a whole lunar cycle. So they have to wait 30 days to really know if whatever that is right for them. And that's also their authority, because they are like, they literally, like, I believe that we are the stars and earth, we are the universe, like we are it. And
right.
For reflectors though, they are so in tune with the stars and the moon that it's really important for them to create a relationship with understanding astrology. And in human design, that's called the transits. So like I think that is what astrology calls it too, the transits, like what's happening in the stars today, because it affects us all, but for them, it really impacts them. So for them, that would be a really good practice. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And 1%. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Perfect.
And then the authority. So it's like our inner compass, how we're here to make decisions. There are 7 different ones. So there's the emotional authority, the sacral, the splenic, self-projected, ego, mental, and then the lunar.
Oh, interesting. Because it's interesting to hear, like of course you told me about mine, but even understanding like the bigger picture of, I'm this versus these other ways of interesting. And that's that's how you're like making decisions in the world. And I think some of it, for me, it was just the confidence. And inside, like I already knew it, right? Like if I wanted to be honest with myself and be like, you already knew this stuff, especially the part for me where it's like, I take my energy, I'm like very much don't need people. It's not very tactful way to say that, but my energy is
you're independent.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Right. And there's a lot of people, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that aren't like that need other energies to keep them focused or keep them feeling loved or whatever it is. But that's been something that I've always struggled with, because I'm like, I'm the alien. Like, I'm just going to go on my own little path over here and do my own thing. But I still felt like I should be wanting to be something else. So even having that just gave me like, this is who I am. Like, why am I going to fight that? How about I just like step into that power and step into that way of living and stop fighting myself? Because
yeah. And then having the conversations with the people close to you, because that's something really important for manifestors to do, is like, hey, I just learned this is how I'm here to operate. And I've always known this, but now I'm not going to fight myself. And I want you to know I love you. But when I step back, it's not meaning that I'm mad at you or something's wrong. Like, I'm not stepping out of the relationship, but that's my time to go in and retreat and be like with myself. And when I'm ready, I'll come back, and then experiencing the flow of that relationship after having that conversation, because we are taught, right, to be the people pleasers or to not hurt people's feelings, or, like, oh, that does sound like fun, but why do I not want to go? I just don't really feel like going. And then they make you feel bad. So then you end up saying yes. And then you're like, why am I here? And then you're just like,
and then something weird and bad happens, or not necessarily bad, but you're just like, I should be at home right now.
Right. Like someone says something really insulting to you and you're like, God, you shouldn't have just been here. Or like, there's no food that you want to eat. You're like, I'm starving. I thought this, just little examples, but.
Well, and I love too human design, because like, it's mind, body, soul, right? Like it taps into, okay, we're the soul in this body, like having this human experience. And it's like tap into your body, like these physical elements. But then there's also the mind, which can do all sorts of crazy things to us. But then the soul and like the spirit connection from crown, right? That is on another level, like your intuition, whether you're feeling that through your gut or through your heart or however. So this brings all of those together, because I think so often we hear them talked about individually. You can't look after your body without like being, in my opinion, you can't fully look after your body without being connected to like the guiding, your higher power, your source, right? And vice versa, it's holistic. It's like, you can't just focus on one and expect the other one to take care of itself. I think human design gives you that broad picture to be able to do that.
I agree. It does that. And then it also, being able to understand yourself and others around you literally creates just so much more understanding of each other, so much more compassion, if you're in a relationship. So if you're a splenic individual and your partner is an emotional authority, or maybe they're a reflector, so it's 30 days and you're like, hey, because splenics are very spontaneous, right? It's like, let's go do this thing. Or like just has that energy, I'm like, let's go. And then your partner is an emotional authority and they're like, whoa, like, because emotional authority, their knowing is not in this moment. It takes a few days, maybe a night to sleep on a thing. That's like a big thing, and it's like, they're like, oh my God. And then you're like, what? You don't love me? You don't have fun with me? What's going on? Like, because like, that's what there's just all these narratives of all the things that we've been conditioned to believe how things are supposed to be. And then it's like, and then it creates this conflict. But then when you have this understanding, it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is what I want to do. Hey, how do you feel about that? Sleep on it. We can plan it in like a couple days, like, even though I want to do it now, but like, I want you to be a part of it. And how does your body feel? And it just, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
now I think in this world right now that is so divisive and opposite, right? Like having just compassion for humanity in general, right? Like we've got, not only are we completely designed differently, like we also, our world experiences, our childhood, right? Like there's nothing's the same. So just understanding that someone has gotten to where they are right now with the opinion that they have, whether we like it or not, or agree with it or not, we can like, suddenly you can see them as like someone that has had a completely different life experience as you. And that's why they are where they are. And I think that I just love that, like just the compassion and the beauty in the difference of that, rather than us all being like sheep.
100%. And like Ra Ruhu talks about what he calls the passenger consciousness. So he's like, this is our operating manual, and we're here to sit in the passenger seat and like just follow our manual and like watch and observe and see how our life plays out. And really it's just an experiment. But let me tell you, when I started my experiment, well, first of all, when I started reading all the things, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me, and it's giving me permission, and it's giving me how to like operate in the world where I've experienced so much rejection, so much resistance that like, I am going to try this, you know? So I tried it, and then like, whoa, you know, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like observing and watching. And I'm like, I wonder what energy type they are, or like, what's their authority? And then also like, what is their life story? But I'm not taking things the way I used to take them. Like, I definitely have way more compassion, and I'm at more ease. Right. And so I'm like, when stuff happens, I'm not flipping out about it like I used to. I mean, of course there are times where I'm like, oh my God, this emotionally like hurts, like I'll cry or whatever. Like, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. Like, it's going to happen, but the way you experience it and feel it is so different than when you have that lack of awareness.
Totally. And even self-compassion, I bet, right? Like, I think there's so many people in the world that are living externally, and I used to be one of them. I still can be, of course.
I feel like we live in this world. Kind of how we've been conditioned.
Yeah. And we live in this world, right? So we're like, we're having a human experience connected to ourselves, but we live in this world, and that's what we're here to do. So, but having like, I've been thinking more about like, there's a lot of people that I'm like, do you love yourself? And people cringe at like thinking about that. No, I don't love myself. I'm like, you are the only person that you are guaranteed to live the rest of your life with. And you are this unique being, and like being able to almost see the human design as sweet. Like, these are the gifts, like, this is me. And wrap around like, almost if you need to love yourself as in a third party angle to start with, like do that, and then like step into it and just start loving being you. And like you've experienced, it's like, oh, feels like how life should be, a lot more joyful and at peace with this person that I am.
Yeah, I agree. Me too.
What was like I want to turn it back to you again, because I'm like, obviously this has changed our life. Can you just touch on one or two of like the big like ahas about understanding yourself more deeply?
Yeah. One thing that really got me was for projectors. So I'm a projector, I'm a splenic projector, and we see so deeply into the other, and we want others to see into us, and we want that recognition and just that closeness. We all want that. But with the way my aura is and my strategy, I did not know that, like we're basically taught like to initiate, or like, if you want it, go get it, say blah, 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 all the things. And so I experienced so much resistance within my relationships. And I never really understood why, because I'm like, I have such a big heart and I feel like I'm so nice, Right. I mean, of course I can have my moments, but like, and then I was always like trying to invite myself to things like groups of friends, like they'd be doing things. I'm like, oh, I want to go. And they're just like, or like I would go and then something would happen and I would feel rejected or like left out or feel really bad. And that like was something that continued through my life, like just my whole life. And then in 2019, I was in a romantic relationship, which was, not going so well. And I was expressing myself in the best way that I could. And it just wasn't working. So we ended the relationship. But within that, I continued to search more in relationship and like, how can I show up? Like, what is going on? And I'd listened to Mark Groves, Create the Love. He's amazing. And he does interviews. And he interviewed this gal named Lacey Phillips, and she mentioned human design. So I really started to dive into human design early 2019, but it wasn't until that relationship ended that I had more space to really dive in and have an understanding of like, whoa, like I really am just seeking out others and then inviting myself. So, and then that's like feels really, can feel really icky to certain people.
Right.
Unless I'm being invited or recognized. And some of these friendships or relationships I was having, I really fully wasn't recognized for my essence, for who I really was. And so that's really important. I think in all relationships, all people, like if you're starting to notice like these people that you're spending so much time with are not really seeing you or like acknowledging you,
right,
you need to step out of that, or, you know, step back a little bit more from that, because it's not, doesn't feel good. But for projectors, since we do have that absorbing aura, like it really, I feel so intensely. And not, it's not to say that other energy types don't experience that as well, because we have, you know, our channels and our chakra centers and stuff. So like, depending on if they're open, undefined, or defined, like it does, you can feel things like intensely. But for projectors, we feel really deeply. And anyway, so that was the thing. When I learned that, I started to play around that summer with waiting for the invitation.
yeah,
And I noticed it in my relationships at work, waiting to be like asked to like share my perspective. And it was like, wow, when they like, and it's so hard because I see things and I want to share, and I'm like, or like I have this really good friendship at work, and then it's like, oh, let's go do this. She's like, yeah. And then she would ditch me all the time. And I'm like, what the heck? And then I just stopped like asking to hang out. And then when she would ask, and if it felt right to me in my splenic authority, I would say yes. And then it would go really well. And I'm like, this is so interesting. And I felt so much more at ease. And that's a huge one for me. Yeah. So,
well, and it's interesting because that's it, feeling at ease with you. I think everyone comes to the table with their own stuff, right? So like some people, like they're rejecting, not really, but you know what I mean? Because of their own crap that they've got going on, right? It's not, but I think we can't control other people, I think is where I'm trying to go with this, is like understanding yourself and living your life in a way that brings peace to you based on understanding who you are. That's where you can come home to, right? Like that's where you can come home to, okay, I can't control other people.
Or like, oh, this is why it keeps happening, you know, because I've been in therapy, I've done so many different things like EMDR, attachment stuff. Like, I mean, you know, like all the things. So it was just like, and it's just so wild. Like, this is the time I chose to be born in this body to this family, you know, and it's like really my whole theme that I'm here to grow and evolve is that sense of rejection. Just a little, I want to drop something in here with that. Within the human design system, it talks about the I Ching, but within that, there was a student of Raru who's named Richard Rudd, who's incredible. And he started to channel the I Ching in a very, very deep, profound way. And he calls them the gene keys. So there's 64 gene keys, and it talks about the shadow, the gift, and the city. And so this is all within your human design chart. So if you have like certain gates or channels activated, the Richard Rudd, his gene key book, you can look into that and really look into your shadow. And he has the hologenetic profile, I believe what it's called. So you can really dive deeper into your soul and into the wounding that you're here to heal from. And my main theme was rejection, Gemma. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, of course I was born a projector and born into this family, and then having an anxious attachment, like, oh my God. So it just like, I'm like having that awareness and understanding. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. Like, and I still like get that sense every now and then of like feeling rejected, but then I like sit with myself and I'm like, okay, how was I following my strategy? Am I following my authority? And then I'm sitting in that passenger seat and I'm still allowing myself to feel, but I'm not allowing it to fully trigger me and activate my body to where I go into this loop that could last like weeks or months of me just feeling like a pile of crap, you know? So it really like shifted, and it happened so quickly, like just noticing the energetics. And that's where I was like, human design is it. And I'm also a social worker, you know, so I've always loved understanding humans and the human connection and just the brain. And then just like sociology, all those things. So like when I found human design and really started to dive into it, I was like, wow, this is the modality that can help us. Like really like, okay, like here I am stepping into this, but then if I do have other things I need to work through, which we all do.
Right. We always will. There'll always be something, right? Yeah.
And here's the other ways you can do that. But like, you'll feel so rooted within yourself that it's like, it'll be easier. The healing from those woundings will happen quicker, I feel like.
Oh my gosh.
From my experience.
Yeah. Well, and I love your, like, even the name of your company, like guiding you home to you, right? Like that's where I've been just, when the world's going to get crazy, your life is going to have its ups and downs, but if you can come back and like reconnect, find the peace within, like your needs, like realign, refresh, like all of that, you can conquer anything. But it's like, if you're trying to go to the outside world for approval and love and answers, right? Yeah. Foundation, right? You're building your foundations on sand, like root yourself into yourself. And I love, that guiding you home to you is
thank you.
Just beautiful. Yes. Well, I know we really could talk about this all day.
Oh my gosh.
But let's kind of get more into like your offerings, how people can find you, how you would recommend that we learn more about this.
If this definitely resonates with you, I would recommend, oh, sorry, my alarm's going off. I have little alarms to help me to remember to come home to self, like to breathe, to remember, like, especially right now in our world, there's a lot going on.
Yes, there is.
So if you want to learn more about your human design, I would love to do a reading. I do one-on-one readings, and I do like to do more than just one-on-one, because I feel like with what you were saying, like I give you all this stuff and it's a lot to process and take in, but having that consistent person to be like your guide, I feel like really can help you get into that alignment faster. So I do have offerings that are like a package deal, but I feel like it's really based on the individuals. So having communication, like just having a conversation, we could figure something out. And to connect with me would be at my email. So Jaki, JAKI HD guide@gmail.com. And you can find me at Guiding You Home to You on Instagram, and you can DM me there. There are like a couple other human design people that I follow within the community. So if you guys are curious, like hit me up on Instagram and I'll just shoot people over to like those, because I feel like it's just too much to add right now.
Yeah, no, totally. And I can always put it in the show notes. I'll put your contact information in the show notes and tag you and everything too. So perfect. Awesome.
And then if you're really, really into it, there's like a ton of books. So the human design book by Ra Ruhu, but it's he's a very dense person. And some people find his energy, he's a manifester. So some people find his energy like, woo, like it's just really big. I really love it personally. But yeah. So, and then there's the jovianarchive.com that people could go onto there and like purchase content from Raharuhu, but he likes to kind of like go on tangents and stuff. And some people like it to the point, and that's where I'm at. Like, I love to do my readings where it's like, what's going on in your life? And this is who you are. Like, this is what your chart says. And then I love to give practical things to help them with whatever is happening in their current situation. And yeah, it's awesome. It's fun.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Well, and then I always like to end with bringing it back locally. So I like to call vibrant, or I define vibrant by just glowing from the inside out, from a mind, body, soul, spirit connection. Who are people, do you have 2 or 3 people locally who inspire you in that way?
Yeah. Julianne Edwards and Brandi Fisher. So
What
they're
do they
both
both
yoga
do?
instructors. Yeah.
Of course, sounds fabulous.
Also, I do want to say back to the offerings, I will be offering some talks coming soon in the community. So at Dr. Bonita, she just changed the name of her building, the Healing Studio or the Healing Arts Studio. Yeah. So I'll be offering some talks there soon about human design, and same at Brandi Fisher's studio, which is Freedom Finders Yoga.
Okay. I've seen it. I'll look her up and put that in the show notes.
Yeah. So I'll be offering some chit chats there. And yeah, so we can just start talking about it and creating that community.
Perfect. Love it. Yeah. And I think too, it'd be interesting to hear from other people and like how they're experiencing it. Like, I love that group discussion to almost like settle into like, oh, this is who I am, but there's other ways of like living out there in the world. I love it.
And when we come into community and witness each other, especially when we're all working on just rooting in with self, like it just creates that like, oh, they're going through it too.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
And I believe in you. And even, it's incredible what community can do. And when you come together, like how much change can happen.
Yeah, I completely. The power of, especially I love it with women too.
Yes.
But anyways,
oh my gosh.
right.
This was so good, Gemma.
Thank you so much for joining me.